Today on The Intelligent Asset, environmental reporting as a business imperative in asset operations. I'm joined by Jamie Azzopardi, APAC sales leader for IBM and Envizi. Welcome to The Intelligent Asset, a podcast on digitizing enterprise asset management, developing intelligent interactions, and building systems of intelligence for asset operations. For industry professionals who work in EAM and facilities management across transportation, public sector, utilities, manufacturing, and large enterprises. We want to tie the global challenges we all share to the world of EAM and how we can all make change for the better, building a more sustainable collective future. And this episode is brought to you by Certus Digital, Australasia's leading provider of sustainability solutions for asset-intensive enterprises. I'm Sam Williams, one of the hosts of The Intelligent Asset, and today I'm joined by Jamie Azzopardi. Such a privilege to have you with us. Jamie, please introduce yourself to listeners.
Hi, Sam, and the privilege is mine. So thank you very much for having me here today to represent IBM, the IBM Business Unit Sustainability and Envizi, which is a product that I look after across Asia Pacific as the sales leader. It's an interesting role since the acquisition of the Envizi solution by IBM early last year. So we're about 13, 14 months in on that acquisition, and it is now solely and squarely one of our core products in our IBM portfolio and the sustainability business unit.
Great. Maybe just let's talk at a macro level. What are some of the trends we're seeing at an executive level around the race to net zero carbon emissions, and particularly this idea of ESG or environment, social and governance? Can you kind of give listeners a bit of a précis or an overview of just what is ESG and the rise of environmental reporting in particular?
Yeah, definitely, Sam. So ESG is, as you said, stands for environment, social, governance. So it effectively looks after the two elements of environment and social in a governance framework. And it does take various forms, and it does take various iterations, really depending on the organisation and how they're applying it. Some organisations we will talk about it as EHS, so environment, health and safety. Others will talk in slightly different contexts, and it also has a country lens as well. So as I talk to different organisations in different industries across the different countries of APAC, they're kind of variations of a theme, but the underlying base of all of that, of course, is around helping organisations and organisations wanting to understand how they are performing in these areas, and then report on them in a way that is against certain frameworks or some sort of governance structure that gives the audience of those reports the ability to interpret them in a certain manner. It's been around for a long time. This is not a new phenomena. It has been around, and if I look at it, Envizi was co-founded in Australia, over 14 years ago now, and we have a number of our customers across Australia and New Zealand who have been using the solution for 10 plus years. And what we've noticed is probably over the last few years a real rapid change in how the solution is being used. So if I look at it from the ESG perspective, the governance side of it is becoming stronger and more stringent. We're seeing a lot more focus on that element, and I can talk about that as we continue this discussion. But a lot of focus is also on the environment piece as well, particularly the acknowledgement and the recognition around climate change and managing greenhouse gases. And some of that is altruistic. Companies want to do the right thing. They want to reduce their emissions. They want to do it for various reasons. They see it as a competitive advantage. They see it as a way to reduce their costs, which is a big driver. But we're also seeing the governance, the regulatory elements starting to step up as well globally. And in our region, and New Zealand has a view on this. Australia is forming a view on this. We're expecting some frameworks to be released. So it's an interesting space, and it really is becoming elevated from, maybe something that sat in a part of an organization and really the focus was more on how do they manage energy costs or whatever, to now sitting at the board level and being part of an organization's risk register.
And are you starting to see titles like Chief Sustainability Officer coming through in Australasian enterprises?
Yeah, definitely. So historically, and I joined the Envizi team middle of last year as part of the acquisition. I'm a 7+ year IBMer, and this is my second acquisition. I've worked in security and services, but also did the weather company acquisition, and this is the part of the overall build that IBM is building around sustainability and environment. A lot of our customers that use the solution sit within reporting functions of organizations. So they help their organizations, their employees, produce those ESG reports, the sustainability reports. They have different titles, but most publicly listed companies will have that reporting within their annual reports, or many will have them now separate as well. Public sector as well will do that. And sometimes there wasn't necessarily the link between the chief sustainability officer or the vice president of sustainability or whatever, and to those people doing the reports. But we are now definitely seeing that interconnectability. So we are seeing that the reporting will drive the strategy will drive the reporting and the planning, and we're seeing this interconnection now between not just reporting for governance sake, but also tracking and planning and managing how the strategies and the plans in place will achieve certain outcomes, and then altering and pivoting as required. So it is becoming its own profession if it wasn't already. I'm sure there are people that have been doing this for years who might not be happy at that statement, but it's definitely standing on its own, and that's also bringing in other elements of an organisation too. So we're seeing legal getting involved. We're seeing the finance arm of the business, the CFO line, for instance, where some of the sustainability sits, also getting involved. And of course, IT, definitely now getting more involved than perhaps in the past.
Excellent. And so where does Envizi fit in ESG reporting?
Yeah, so at its base, Envizi is an ESG reporting solution. What does that mean? It means we help our clients track and manage their energy consumption, their waste consumption, their travel. Scope 1 and Scope 2, I'm not sure if the audience or if anyone is familiar with Scope 1 and Scope 2, but they've been historic big drivers for organisations to focus on their greenhouse gas emissions and reduce those down. And the net benefit, of course, is in countries where there is a carbon tax, like Singapore, for instance, the less they're producing, the less tax they're paying against a carbon tax. But it's also a great driver to reduce costs. Identify those areas where energy is being consumed at perhaps a higher level than equivalent locations. So Envizi was sort of built for that complex real estate environment, financial services, retail, property organizations where energy was consumed. And it's now evolved into many other areas, as Envizi itself, really focusing on Scope 3, which is becoming the big driver in organizations for controlling and managing their emissions. But also, since the acquisition into IBM, Envizi is now sort of sitting at the apex of a very comprehensive technology suite where sustainability is kind of inbuilt into all of those different applications. So if it's our Maximo suite, which I imagine many people on this listening to this podcast would be aware of, Maximo has a lot of capability in it when historically we may not have looked at it through the lens of sustainability. We might have looked at it through the lens of optimizing work schedules and maintenance and so on from there. But of course, if we can optimize those, we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we're reducing costs and so on. So within IBM, we are definitely talking the talk around this. IBM has a 50-year history here, and it's now becoming part of our strategy across all of our technology, software and hardware.
Okay. And I'm just curious around the social side of ESG. Are there functions within Envizi that deal with the social component?
Yeah, definitely. So the main, I guess, one of the main users for our clients who use Envizi is for their reporting against the various ESG frameworks. The frameworks are equal but different is probably the way I would put it. Some of those frameworks are more focused on industries. Some of them are more focused on the E versus the S, and vice versa. And then, of course, some frameworks are country specific. So in India, we're seeing BRSR, which was introduced by the Indian government for the top 1,000 publicly listed companies. We're expecting something similar in Australia and New Zealand and Singapore and other countries in the region. So it definitely does cover that as well. And one of the things when we are talking to our clients about is, well, what are you doing today? What are you trying to, what are you doing currently? What are you reporting on now? What are the issues you're dealing with? And most organizations, large and small, small to sort of mid enterprise, would be doing some level of reporting. Obviously, the larger the organization, publicly traded, public definitely. But they might just be using Excel. They might just be using advanced versions of Excel, but Excel nonetheless. So it is quite laborious for them. It is risk prone. It is easy to, not uncommon to enter in a number incorrectly, and that can impact a report. So one of the things we do through Envizi is we give access to all the different frameworks to our clients, the main ones. We keep them up to date because they do change, they do evolve. TCFD, which is a really popular framework that a lot of organizations report against, or one of the ones that they report against, I think not the last sort of 12, 18 months has changed 3 times. So, we keep those frameworks up to date as changes happen in the frameworks. And it allows our clients to report against multiple frameworks or reporting structures using roughly the same data, and making them a lot more efficient, which helps them from a regulatory perspective. But it also helps them when they're trying to acquire new business. So, we are seeing in more and more RFPs and, requests for funding, submissions and the like, an element around sustainability. So it helps them produce these reports and this information. And then the other functions we've got built into Envizi, and there's quite a few, and I won't necessarily go through them all, but also being able to track their progress as well. So reporting is one thing, but being able to track on that element too. So the social element definitely does come into it, depending on the frameworks, but it's that interoperability across them all, which I think helps.
Right. And I guess if we drill down into asset operations, what we know about the industry is that they tend to be one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas. Do you want to talk a little bit about that side of things and where Envizi can help in an asset-intensive environment?
Yeah, good point that you raise. It's a really dynamic environment, from construction through to commissioning to ongoing maintenance. There's a lot involved in managing assets, big and small, and from an Envizi perspective, of course, we can pull the data out of those assets, and track energy consumptions, etc. If at an asset level, if we have access to the IoT sensors or access to that data, which we see now in a lot of machinery, etc. We can also work with clients and partners to, like I said, put IoT assets out there. So we're capturing energy consumption, waste production, usage, etc. The Envizi solution within IBM is now a portfolio product in the sense of it does connect into Tririga, Maximo. We are building connectors into other IBM technology, but also have the ability to connect into non-IBM technology as well. So we can bring all of that in. And again, really putting a visual lens on how organizations are using those assets and managing them, and extending that even further. And if I look sort of broader across the IBM stack, we've got a couple of publicly available use cases. There's a very large bridge. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly. Sundbelt, I believe, is the pronunciation. This is
where is it?
It's in Denmark, I believe, sort of up there, and it's a beautiful looking bridge actually, if you like bridges. But it's a bridge that had a 100-year lifespan. And using Maximo, and obviously we've got some Envizi flavors to this too, but using Maximo and the capabilities in Maximo around visual inspections and leveraging the data that's being produced and AI, we've helped that organization maintain a much more focused regime around asset management and maintenance and so on, and effectively extending the life of that bridge by another 100 years. Now, at an operational level, that just makes good business sense for lots and lots of different reasons. Manages costs, manages risks, keep assets running and maintenance schedules running. But at a sustainability level, it's effectively taking 70,000 tons of greenhouse gases out of the environment over the life of that bridge, so the next 100 years. So this is this sort of interoperability now that's existing between asset optimization, maintenance optimization, managing costs, reducing costs, and having that sustainability benefit that comes from all of that as well.
Right. And I guess from a kind of a pragmatic point of view, where are you seeing organizations start on this journey in terms of using reporting systems like Envizi?
Yeah, this is a really good question. And I guess if I was to draw a sort of a theme across all of Asia Pacific, it is everyone now, I think most organizations now that operate in a global environment, or at least a regional environment, have really now understand that this is a business level imperative. It will determine their competitiveness in the marketplace. It will determine how they're viewed socially. We know consumers, IBM has done research and we released it last year, the Institute of Business Value report. Consumers are making decisions where they spend their money based on a company's credentials. So we're seeing this sort of rapid sort of awareness across the region. To be fair, many of those organizations have historically already been reporting, but they're acknowledging now that, one or two or three people using a spreadsheet or some other tool maybe isn't going to give them the scale, the speed, and the coverage that they want. So they are looking at an enterprise grade, solution now. And really, where they're going here is almost the pendulum has swung the complete opposite direction, right? Which is not uncommon. And that's creating a bit of complexity and it's creating a bit of lethargy in the process. So when we talk to organizations out there, we really do start with, well, what are you doing today? Right? Like, what is important to you today? And let's work out how we automate, we streamline, we improve, and importantly, build an audit capability into this, because this information is driving investment decisions. This information is driving procurement decisions. So it has to be auditable and have that finance grade accountability. So we start there with clients and then we sort of take them on, well, what's next and where are you heading? And based on your industry and your country and a legislative environment, etc., what are some of the other things we should be working with you on? So we don't at IBM and Envizi, we don't tend to do that by ourselves. We tend to do that with partners that have, whether it's IBM Consulting or some of our systems integrators or our great group of IBM business partners. We do work in consultation and in partnership to do this. But really, the thing we do encourage most organizations is to take a phased approach. So to really replicate what they're doing today, bring in a solution and capability and a mindset around doing that, and then expanding it out from there. And our technology has been built with that in mind. So whilst we interconnect across the IBM stack, and that will get more effective over time, I've seen the roadmap. Our dev teams have got a lot of work ahead of them, and they're just jumping at the bit to do that. But we aren't contingent on IBM technology either. So we are a standalone platform. We can interoperate with lots of different technology, and we're modular. So we can work with customers within their capabilities, their requirements, and their budgets today, and then help them expand as they require.
So I guess coming back to what you were talking about originally is that we're seeing a shift from the environmental and sustainability parts of business from merely being about compliance to actually becoming part of the corporate strategy. And if I understood you correctly, what you're seeing is that organizations are now asking for it to form part of their strategy. And that's what's driving those conversations rather than merely how do we comply, with whatever regulatory framework is relevant. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, look, that's definitely fair to say. And look, the motivations for all that are different. I've had conversations with people where, they're quite frank, where they say, well, I don't really care about sustainability. So the next question is, well, do you care about reducing your costs? Generally, they do. And then we enter into a conversation around that. So, and then on the other end, it's very much around, there might be a social element that an organisation is really driving. And, you know, I've seen across the region many of our own existing customers will release, marketing material, advertising on TV or web advertising and the like, where all they're promoting is their sustainability plans and credentials. So, many organisations do see this as a competitive driver, direct at the consumer level. But we are seeing more RFPs, more procurement decisions being made with a lens to the ESG element around it as well. And it is becoming, I think, and I'm not an economist by any means, so I have to give you all the caveats in this statement. But if you look at what countries like Singapore are doing in the region, what India is trying to, well, not trying to do, but what India is driving, obviously Australia, New Zealand as well, it is this lens that this is going to be the next level that a globally competitive country will need to be operating on, particularly in the more developed space, right? So, Singapore's got plans to increase the carbon tax twice over the next 3 years and reinvest that money back into their economy and SMEs and so on to help them reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. India is also doing something similar and driving electrification. My country, Australia, introduced the climate change bill last year. With a very strong, some would argue not enough, some would argue probably too much. There's always the counter view as well. So yeah, it's definitely becoming a core focus for all organisations. And one of the things we've heard from many people is it will drive investment decisions.
Right. I guess this is my opportunity to have a dig at the Aussies about being a little bit slow to coming to the party. The change of government last year, no doubt, has caused a little bit of a change in attitude towards sustainability.
Yeah, look, I love the dig. Thank you. This would not be an Australia-New Zealand conversation without one of them, and I won't make it, even though my brother-in-law is a Kiwi, and I give him a hard time all the time, and vice versa. You look, the change in government last year definitely did signal a very big shift in the way Australia is approaching it at a federal level. Interestingly, though, we've got existing users, Envizi, long-time users at the state and the council level as well. So whilst at a federal level, one would argue, and I'm choosing my language carefully here, but one would argue perhaps at a federal level there was that shift. We have, we've got a lot of governments at different levels driving this narrative and driving this approach really heavily for all the reasons we've spoken about.
I'll best leave it there then. So, maybe just for the benefit of listeners, another example that you can point to or use case of Envizi that's effectively achieving better business outcomes.
Oh, look, what I would definitely suggest to people that have an interest in this is please do, for our business partners that are out there already who would have access to a lot of our internal material. For those who aren't IBM business partners but are interested in having this conversation, please reach out to me or through the IBM ecosystem teams. But you will see on our website, on the IBM website, a lot more focus on this material. There's some things we're just in a bit of a moment where a lot of our use cases as Envizi are transferring onto IBM Paper as part of the acquisition. So there's quite a few good ones that we've got out there at the moment that are publicly available. One with Downer, we've just released one with GPT, Celestica as well. There's a whole bunch of others that I'd love to talk about, but I just can't because we haven't necessarily got their approvals just yet. But most of our clients, if not all of our clients, have definitely seen operational improvements internally, so they can do more with less, so they can keep the team 1, 2, 3 people, but they can drive not just the reporting and the auditability of it all, but drive the planning elements and use that information upline so that investment decisions can be made as well. And all of our customers are now looking at what's next in that piece as well. So the big one here is scope 3. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's probably different levels of knowledge around the different scopes and what they mean. But scope 3, in my very simplified way of defining it, is your emissions become my emissions. My emissions become your emissions. So I will choose, as a procurer of services or products or investment or whatever, I will choose in part around how someone else is performing as well. So that's the other element we drive. We help our clients use the technology so that they can make the improvements they need, report on it accurately, and then secure more business and the like from it as well. And as I said, there's some stuff that I can't share at this moment in time, but please do keep an eye on the website, and we will be launching a mini site soon.
For those wanting to get up to speed around the different scopes that you've talked about, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, where would you point people that want to learn more?
Yeah, good question. So there's no shortage of information on the internet, and I know that might sound like a bit of an easy answer. We as IBM are publishing some stuff on our website, so I would always encourage people to have a look. And I haven't seen the final sustainability micro site yet, but I'm sure we'll have some content on there. But a simple Google on scope 1, 2, and 3 will bring up all the information and some great diagrams as they visualize it as well. That will talk about the differences. And, for those in the organizations that are interested, go and talk to your own ESG reporting team or person or people as well. And if you want to learn more about what they're focusing on, that scope 3 piece is really going to drive and is already driving massive change in the environment too. So sounds like an easy answer. Good old Google or whatever search engine you prefer. You won't struggle to find any information.
All right. And last question, from your perspective, do you have any predictions about the rise of sustainability in 2023? Like, what are you seeing at a macro level that's changing in the marketplace?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting. So I think first and foremost, and a lot of the people I've spoken to and seminars that I've attended and conferences and the like, is this is very much an understood issue and opportunity within senior leadership in organisations. We will, I think, see more regulation and requirements at a government level. We know this is coming in Australia and obviously what New Zealand is doing too, and in our region. So that will increase. There is more focus on it at board level, so not just senior leadership, but the boards are now interested in this as well. They're worried about stranded assets. They're worried about their access to finance. Are they going to be able to get investment at the same rates or terms as maybe a competitor of theirs, and how does that impact them? So there is that real business lens now that's being applied to this. I think what we'll also start to see is a real it'll accelerate is a real mindset shift in the sense of sustainability does sort of permeate across everything that we do. So if we can save a crew being sent out for an hour each way to go and work on an asset, then that's going to have a whole bunch of operational benefits and costs and so on from there. But the underlying tone is you're not putting a vehicle on the road for an hour. You're not putting people out there and so on from there. So there's that sustainability benefit. And depending on the motivation, you'll get it no matter what. So if your motivation is to reduce greenhouse gases, the benefit will be you save money, you're not putting your people out in an environment when they don't need to be, et cetera, et cetera. If the motivation is that, then you'll get the sustainability benefit as well. So that interconnectability between it all, I think, is starting to mature. And look, and I was posed this question recently in a couple of different forums, actually, not just one forum, but obviously the world is in an interesting phase at the moment as far as inflation and costs. And my view on all of that is it's actually a great opportunity for organisations to focus on this area because it does have a net saving benefit in what they do. So maybe the motivation isn't to reduce greenhouse gases, or maybe the motivation is different, but there is an opportunity here to manage costs and to drive that efficiency in an organisation.
Well, I'm tempted to say that what I'm hearing there is that it's inflation suppressing, but that might be a bit of a stretch. So
Yeah, I'm not an economist. I won't comment on that. I know many, and they would get angry at me if I did. So
there we go. All right, Jamie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking through Envizi and what it can do to help organisations meet their ESG goals.
no, thank you, Sam. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think we'll watch this space, and maybe we'll reconvene in 6 to 12 months and see how we're progressing. It'll be great.
Oh, we're bound to have you back on the podcast before then. So
sounds good. All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening to The Intelligent Asset. Each episode is available on your favourite podcast channel, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and soon on YouTube. Please follow us to stay up to date with the latest in intelligent asset development.